Do you prefer the touring life, or now that you're settled in, now you're a dad? Do you prefer is it Nashville life for you? But which one do you prefer?
Yeah, this is where I want to be. I want to be here for my baby and my wife, and they're obviously number one priority for me. There's a lot of opportunity here in the city, but there's also the bigger picture. There's bigger things out there, kind of more than meets the eye.
This is festivalPass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next. Okay, friends, this is the festivalPass Stories podcast, and we are, of course, presented by Dos Hombres, the artisanal mezcal meant to be shared. Created by Aaron Paul and Brian Cranston. Have a drink with us at doshombres.com/delivery. Ever wanted to have the opportunity to invest in a product early that could be the next Airbnb? Sounds interesting to me. Learn why entrepreneurs and celebrities with exits approaching $10 billion have already invested in festivalPass. Go to invest.festivalpass.com to learn more. And if there's a place to have a mezcal neat or on the rocks and a cold beer while listening to some live music, it's Nashville. And my guest today knows a bit about that place, could probably give you a tour with his eyes closed. Growing up in and around the music city and in and around the music industry. Ladies and gentlemen, he's joining us live from the Ryman Auditorium, or maybe it's just his living room. Please welcome producer and founder of 6-1 Live Entertainment and a lot of other titles we'll get into momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Billy Gemmill. Billy, what's going on?
Hello. How's it going?
All right. Hey, I mentioned the Ryman. I heard about that place one of the first trips that I made down in Nashville. I didn't care who's playing it. I just wanted to see anybody playing there. So I bought tickets to see the Punch Brothers, which turned out to be, I've never even heard of these guys, turned out to be not only just a great show, but an unbelievable experience. And I kind of stumbled in there. I saw, I was Googling stuff, and I was like, this place looks awesome and historic. But it's an absolute, not only a treasure, but it really is a landmark. It's a national landmark. And you kind of grew up there watching your parents perform there. That's got to be, it's a pretty unique childhood. What was that experience like? Is it just a kid and this is just what we're doing, or did you realize that it was something pretty special?
Man, I never really realized until it was special until people kind of hear that story or knew my parents or my mom, and I was like, oh, I guess that was a big deal. I never even thought about it. It was just kind of like second nature, like hey, I've got a gig tonight, and helping my dad load in the drums, or my mom, run her microphone cables and plug them in, and, do her voice checks for her, as a background singer. So, it was a really great experience, man. Like a lot of good people, obviously very successful company. And it was just a really, really, really great time, growing up around that.
And were they like a 2-person act, or what was the story there?
No, my dad for a while was a session drummer, and back in the day before Nashville became, and I'm using air quotes, like the it city, like
before it became Nash Vegas or whatever, right?
Yeah, they would have kind of like local singer-songwriters, budding singer-songwriters, play there during the week, obviously, and then towards the weekend they would get more towards your Linda Ronstadts and Barbara Mandrell's, which is where my mom was a backup singer for.
Oh, wow.
And it was kind of separate. Like sometimes, I would load in my dad's drums and get to have a sound check before I even knew what sound checks were. And then, kind of the same thing for my mom, kind of helping her, get ready with her coffees and her hot teas to get her voices ready. Man, it was a really great experience.
And then, of course, there was also, they didn't just perform there, but they performed at the Grand Ole Opry. And again, Did you know what that place was, or was it just like me going down to the roller skating rink? It was just a local place.
Yeah, it was just a local. It was a local place. My dad played there again with a couple different, bands and some session guys and stuff, as well as my mom. And later on in life, he was in this he was working for the school system, and he had this like teacher band, if that makes sense. And
sure.
They had like a talent show, and I was super young, and I went and I got to jam and played a Huey Lewis Heart of Rock and Roll on drums. There, it was one of my first experience doing that. So, it was just a thing. It was just never kind of a big deal. It was just like, hey, this is what we're going to go do. And then I just kind of, surf that wave, man. Like I loved it. I loved the feeling. I loved the vibe and the energy from the people and experiences. And it was a really good time.
So you got involved like from day one. You're doing sound checks again. You didn't even know what it was called. Kind of helping them, set up sort of roadie stuff, production stuff from day one, and then you actually get to play the drums. So was the dream ever to be a performer? Was that the road you were like, I'm going to go down here, I'm going to be a rock and roll drummer? Or was there a punk side to this as well? Besides, I wouldn't call Huey Lewis punk, but was there in you, there was that punk rocker?
Yeah. Coming up in the 90s, growing up on MTV and watching all the, alternative, all your Soundgarden, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Mudhoney, kind of Red Hot Chili Peppers, all down the line. And growing up here, you kind of all you really heard was country music, which is fine, and that's cool. Yeah. But I kind of growing up was really geared towards that sound of it all. And I really wanted to be like a huge punk rock drummer. And then I discovered Dave Grohl in the early days, and Taylor Hawkins with Alanis Morissette. Oh man, I can go on and on. All these killer, drummers that I saw and got to experience playing and things like that, and learning from them. I really wanted to be a punk rock drummer and live that life, man. But I say I didn't have the chops, but I just, it's a whole other realm, I guess, of things. And if that makes any sort of sense at all.
Sure.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. But the more I got involved with the production side of things and the logistics side of things, I fell more in love with that side of it, even more so. And I let the cool kids play all the, play the drums these days.
But you did have some bands growing up, right? You had the garage bands and the high school bands, and you were headlining in Billy's backyard and Joe's basement and so on. Yes.
Yeah, I would throw these like little punk rock parties in my my dad and stepmom's garage when they would go out of town. And then I would promote them, and I'd book all my other friends' bands from different schools. And we would just like have like skate parties and, like sneak in Zimas and play basketball and try to just, be cool, whatever that is. And it was so much fun kind of being involved with that without really knowing you're involved in it. It was just really fun.
Yeah, I think my generation hit the wine coolers, and then you guys went Zima. And it was, I believe the branding was something different.
Ooh, yeah, that and the Sainide Special Brew, man, was a classic hit.
Yeah, two different asset classes, I think, the Sainides and then the Zima crowd. It was slightly different, but the Zima was ahead of their time.
They really were, and now it's like what the cool kids drink now with the ciders and the White Claws and all that fun stuff. Now I'm like, man, I should have gotten in on that in the early 90s. We'd have been billionaires.
The Zima people are sitting around like we had this idea 30 years ago, but I think the beer lobby was just too strong. And now the beer lobby said, they got a little smarter, and they said, instead of fighting these guys, let's join them. And it's like Bud Light Seltzer, not a sponsor of the podcast, but and then other beers that rhyme with Bologna and so on got into the seltzer game.
Yes.
Now you got Snoop Dogg, who was, marketing St. Ides or, another malt liquor, is now doing the Corona seltzer.
Oh man, he's that guy. He's incredible.
That's full circle in that business.
He's getting in the wine game too, with the 19 crimes, I think.
Yeah, he's in the wine game.
He's killing it, man. Good for him. Smart.
And you've produced some events with Snoop Dogg over the years. Yeah,
I did. I was fortunate enough to jump on board with another company based out of Chicago area called Indigo Road Entertainment, and that I've had a great relationship with over the few years. They came on board, and they actually had a director for that, and I worked underneath them as the producer of these massive tours, and we did Snoop Dogg, and then we did Jake Owen back to back, and it was awesome.
And now I imagine that the green room rider for Snoop Dogg these days is like Corona hard seltzer and Martha Stewart cookbook is like, that's all he's got to have in there, where it was a lot different. It was a lot different 25 years ago. Might've been more of the St. Ides and the crook. I remember the crooked eye, the St. Ides.
Yes.
But we'll get to more of that in a minute. But just from your early life, you head over after the punk bands and so on, and I saw the big press conference when the high school punk rock band broke up, which was that was tough. That was tough for you guys, I'm sure. But then you head off to college in Knoxville, home of Peyton Manning, and of course UT football. But you played a little football there yourself. You were a member of the other kind of football, the European Football Club.
I was, I was. They had a club team there, that was so DIY and kind of paying for your own fuel. I think we got hotels, maybe some sandwiches. Out of the deal. But we played really big schools like South Carolina and MTSU, Vanderbilt men's team when they had a men's team. Of course, we were like the practice dummies against those guys. So, it was really fun.
I played club sports myself, and I saw it. I was like, wow, he played D1 soccer. Then I was like, oh, maybe this is the club. I played club rugby, and I had never played rugby in my life. And I went to a small school in the Northeast. Marist Red Foxes, let's go, guys. Nice. But, we were not – the club rugby team was like, if you could get out of bed on Sunday and get to the van, there was a jersey for you. But you didn't get to take the jersey home. It was like – because they weren't sure who was going to show up, and we needed to field a full team. And, I was on the proud squad that lost to Vassar, which is much more known for literary and liberal arts and – not really known for being a powerhouse in men's sports. Mm-hmm. And I think the school had only been co-ed for maybe 10, 15 years. And we lost to the rugby team. So I did not go further in that career as well. But, so there we go. There's our connection to club sports.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got to scrimmage the girls teams a lot, which I don't know if you follow women's soccer, but they're phenomenal.
The UT women's team, yeah.
Yeah, and we got to we couldn't afford our own jerseys and stuff because I think the rec department paid for some of that stuff. But we got the leftover girls jerseys to wear as our jerseys, which were rad. They were phenomenal. And unfortunately, they didn't let me take the jersey when I graduated either. So
and you lost to the girls team as well. This is nothing to be ashamed about, though. The women are world class at UT. Yes. We used to. Our fraternity used to play the women's basketball team, and it was I think we were probably we lost most of the time we played to them. I know one time we won on a buzzer beater because they had to buy us a keg.
There you go.
And then that was one of the best parties I think we had in college. Just
we didn't even get that. They just told us thanks, leave. And they're like, oh wait. Bye.
You're like, get out of here, you bums. We're like, all right, okay, you won. Isn't that enough? Jeez.
Yeah, pretty much.
But while you're in school, you get into the production game. You're booking bands in and around Nashville, so many awesome venues. And what a time to be there, because it's, you know, the JW Marriott isn't rising into the sky at that point, and it's still this, you know, small town. I mean, at that point, I'd imagine it's like the Oilers are just moving into town and so on, right? It's like the city is on the come. It's on the up. You know, what was it like there then, and booking those bands? I mean, this is a total grassroots effort for you.
Yeah, like it was such a special time before, again, I'm using air quotes, before it came to It City. And like you said, all these massive hotels and honky tonks and developments and everything come down. And it was a really special, and it still is, a very special community, you know.
Yeah. What's the new one? Lincoln Yards, isn't that it? It's like sort of based on Hudson Yards in New York. And
yes, I don't know.
Wild.
I just like every time I would come back into town, I'd see another one in a high rise or some condos, or they'd, you know, plow down some, you know, mom and pop music venue for something. I don't know. It was really easy to navigate. There was, you know, the OG like booking agent guy, and you know, who you had to like had a you know, a special meeting with, but bringing them coffee and, you know, being respectful and kind, and you know, kind of like the grassroots DIY kind of ethics that you learn in those environments, right? So like it was a very, very, very good time to do that and be involved with that.
So then you head to Europe, and not for your love of football, because we have discussed that ad nauseum, but for a career in modeling in Italy. Yeah. How did this come about? I mean, you're a very handsome man, but how did this suddenly come about, where you're like not only going to be modeling, but you're going to be modeling in Italy?
I was walking through. There's a mall here. I don't think it's all fully in full. I don't think it's fully up. I don't know. I think the press practice there. It's like the press practice there, and they do a bunch of other random stuff. But anyway, it used to be a really awesome mall in Antioch, and I went over there to grab like a Christmas present for a girl that I was dating, and literally in and out type of situation, you know, go to Claire's, get some of those, you know, the really, you know, the clip-on earrings. That, you know, for yourself and for her. Yes. Nose ring, the whole, all that stuff.
Whatever. And costume jewelry.
Yeah, costume jewelry. And I walked past these two like scouts, and they were, you know, obviously from the fashion industry, you know, scout, like your typical scouts. Like this story is straight up out of Zoolander, and I've seen the movie. Exactly, my life was exactly like that for a long time. So I walked past them. They came up to me and they're like, "Hey, you know, can we take a Polaroid of you and sign this card and come to this audition in Nashville in, you know, a few months?" And I was like, "Eh," and I just kind of kept walking.
Yeah.
And then I came out of Claire's or wherever I was, and they stopped me again. They're like, "No, seriously, you know, we're taking a picture of you, and you're signing this little, you know, brochure introductory card, and you're coming to this." And I was like, okay. So they took the Polaroid of me in my awesome, like, you know, 1998, 99 Abercrombie and Fitch get up, you know.
Yeah, head to toe.
With the puka shell necklaces and all that stuff. So yeah, and one day I was studying in the library, and my mom called on my cell phone, which I had one at the time, which you could never use, but I had one. And
you turned it off and on, right? Yes. When you weren't using it.
Yes.
You're like, let me turn my phone on. And it's like, beep, beep. Oh, I have a message. How do I check that?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was like one of the brick ones, you know, so it was so awesome. So I sitting there studying, and my mom calls, and she's like, "Yes, you got a call from this agency, next models to come and like do this audition." But there was a bunch of them, like a ton of like all these top huge producers, agencies, models, like, you know, that are in Nashville at the Opryland. Like that's what's even better about this. So I was like, okay. So I was like, I guess I'll go. So I went up that weekend, and there was, you know, like 200, 300 people there, and like from everywhere, like just trying to audition and doing stuff. And I'm like, man, there's no way they're going to choose me, man. Like, there's no way. I get up there and, they took some pictures of me, and again, in my, awesome Abercrombie and Fitch outfit.
Yeah, necklace, the whole thing. It's
the whole thing. And I walked in front of some scouts and some agents, and then like that night I got a call to like, hey, do you want to come to Europe in May? And I was like, what? Like, yeah. Like, just finish your classes, and we'll book you a flight, and you have a place to stay. And that's kind of what happened.
Incredible. Could you speak even a lick of the language out there?
No way. I think the only places I'd been outside of Nashville was, your Panama City Beach and, North Carolina, South Carolina beaches, Percy Priest here in Nashville. That was the biggest place I've ever been. I was 21 years old when I did it. And again, right out of Zoolander, met all the guys that lived in this massive loft together that had been doing it for, years before me, of people from all different backgrounds and ethnicities. And it was awesome, man. It was a really great experience. And I learned a whole lot just about the world and about people in general. It was fun.
So you didn't just stick around for the modeling. You started to get into the production business again there, live shows, events, and so on. So how did you get across the language barrier and start doing those things in Europe?
My mom is an educator, and so she mailed me these books on how to speak or try to learn Italian, or just ways to sort of communicate, because the internet didn't really exist at that time like it does today. So I would get these books and I would try to read as much as I could on how to communicate. And I still can't speak it. I can read it to you, but I can't speak it to you. If someone's speaking it to me, I can understand them for the most part, but I can't speak it. So, I just started trying to communicate with these people. And then from that, I started, having these really great positive relationships from all kinds of different people. And the agency that represented me, my agent actually came up to me and said, hey man, we have a spot it's a PA spot. But if you work hard and, take care of, yourself and business, then, you can have a junior producer spot here. And I could be in charge of, photo shoots, fashion shows, editorials, commercials, all that stuff, as well as like our bookings at, the clubs that they would have their happy hours at. And so I was like, okay, so I would, model, and I was like the seasoned model. I wasn't really good, or I wasn't that dude that's like, killing it all the time. So, I had time, I had seasons, I had 6 months where I would work, and then I would work for them for the rest of the time, the other remaining half of the year, and just cut my teeth at it, and, hired me on as a PA, and then hired me on as a junior producer for that. And it completely changed the game, man. I was a secondary education major at school, and, I came back from that round and told my mom, I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do this.
I found this entire world of international event productions. I can go anywhere. I can do this anywhere on the planet. Yeah. At this point. So you were producing the fashion shows. Were you involved in any live music events while you were there as well?
Yeah. So in Europe, they do, these happy hours where you go and you can pay nothing for beers, and you eat all the food you want, and it's just very community oriented and very positive. So I started booking before EDM was a thing in the States. It was huge over there.
Yeah.
And I started booking EDM DJ bands and punk rock Italian bands. I couldn't speak a word of English.
But you knew punk rock. You're like, it's the international language of punk rock. I know that's punk rock.
Yeah, it's like you do punk rock music, and I'd play in the Clash, and all these great bands, and they did it, man, and it was a really good time to do that. So I started just kind of connecting all the dots between all these positive relationships over the years, and was really did a bunch of festivals and stuff. I say festivals, smaller, 2,000. 3,000 festivals that we work with a team of people, whatever that. And it was so much fun.
I'm looking forward to 2,000, 3,000 person festivals again. This is what
Yes.
this is what it's all about now. So,
Yes.
so you're back and forth for a decade, but I mean, you spent a full 10 years of your life there. And then I saw that you said you toured in bands. Now, does that mean that the fledgling music career peaks its head again, or were you producing and managing these guys?
In between another season, I lived in California for a while, and I was
by seasons, you mean the fashion seasons, fall and spring? Okay.
Fall and spring, yeah. So I came back and I went to California for that season, and I played in some West Coast amazing punk bands, and I was like, man, this is amazing. And I got hired when one of the bands one of the drummer couldn't do it for some reason, and I got the gig, like the 6-month gig to tour up and down the West Coast in a van with a bunch of straight like dudes I didn't know, punk rock guys, and our tour manager who managed us at that time was an amazing human being, and he still is. And he and I hit it off. We were around about the same age. Super smart guy. He had a family then, and I just kind of shadowed him a lot and started getting interested in the tour management production side of that. Yeah. And I just kind of shadowed him a lot, and now he's a manager, the big guy that he's earned and fought his way for, and I learned a lot from him. And that kind of started me in the tour management side. So then I started touring bands in between seasons. Wow. With everything else going on.
So can you reveal the bands that person is working with now, or is that something
like he's up there. He works in the Foo Fighters camp and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Norah Jones and all of that stuff. He's super, super involved in it. And kind of cut his teeth touring punk rock bands. And he was an amazing human being. He just, the way he held himself and cared about people and the band and everything. I just learned a lot from him. So he was very helpful to me.
So after all this globetrotting, you do settle back into Nashville. You're a full-time producer in the area. So many great events, so many live festivals in Nashville, maybe more than ever. Every day is kind of a festival in Nashville as things just continue to open up. But when you got back in, you're like, all right, I'm here. I'm staying for a while. You think, at least. At that point, you're like, I don't know. I could be in Australia next month.
Right.
Something could happen. Right. We're going with the wind.
Right.
This is your single at the time. You're living your life, and you're just riding the tailwinds from this great decade in Europe. But what was the first event you worked on when you got back to Nashville? When you got your feet back on the ground and really started sinking in?
The first one I did was Dancing in the District, and I was just a runner. I was just a coordinator runner. For that, and that was back then. They were free. We had Marvelous 3, the Toadies, 311. Oh my God, we had No Doubt. Had all these like alt bands coming here, and it was so much fun to do that. And then the Commodore Quake, which is at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt produces that one, and they had Jay-Z do it multiple times, and that was, that was so much fun to be involved with that, to kind of give back to the city and be a part of it as well. And Uptown Mix used to be sort of downtown-ish, but now it's no longer. Now there are condo buildings over there now that was so much fun. It was good to be back in the city and kind of working away at that whole thing.
So there was just so many live events. You were like, I'm going to jump in this one. I'm going to do this one and do this one. So is there like a step one in planning one of these festivals? And we have a lot of people that watch our stories because they want to hear really behind the scenes, like on the ground floor. Like, has anyone ever come to you and said, can you help us start a festival? Or we've got No Doubt, or we've got this lineup of great late 90s bands that are, one manager wants to bring them all back together and do a little festival right here in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
So has anyone ever come to you and said, can you help us start this from the ground up from a production standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a lot of, operations, logistics, information that has to go into now, now with the vaccination and COVID policies in place, and, so yeah, there's just a lot of logistics and heavy calculations that can go into it.
Could you say there's like a step one, like somebody says, we want to do this festival, and you're like, first thing I would do is
get a permit.
Get a permit. Yeah.
Because if you don't have a permit, man, you are getting, if you don't get permission from the city, bad news bears. You gotta start off doing the right thing.
Yeah. I'd imagine get a permit and then make sure that you're not conflicting with another festival in town that's like, been around for 20 years. Like, don't be like the USFL and go head to head against the NFL. Like that was the downfall of that league.
Yeah. Don't compete against someone that's doing like the exact same thing or the exact same time as you are, like right down the street.
Yeah. Be like the beer industry. Yeah. Be like the beer industry. Stop fighting. Fighting. Just join them. Be like, hey, let's just, you have your festival that week. We'll do ours the next week. Yeah. And now, as somebody who's spent so much time on the road and had these unbelievable memories and this entire other life on the road in another country too, do you prefer the touring life, or now that you're settled in, you're like, now you're a dad, do you prefer is it Nashville life for you, peace and quiet, producing local festivals, even though that's not peace and quiet? But which one do you prefer?
Yeah, this is where I want to be. I want to be here for my baby and my wife, and they're obviously number one priority for me. And it took a long time to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I relish that, and that kind of motivates me every single day. But I want to be here, and it's kind of a broad answer. Like I want to be here. I want to help the city be involved as it grows. With that Nashville SC here, the Titans, the Predators. Yeah. They're talking about a baseball team coming here. So there's a lot of opportunity here in the city, but there's also the bigger picture. There's bigger things out there. Kind of more than meets the eye. So being open-minded and living outside of a box, to me, like that's kind of where I thrive. You gotta be able to bend at some point in time too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And collaborate and work with other companies and other people and festivals all over. So while still, maintaining, the Nashville roots, I guess.
I like it. So now that you have the Nashville roots and you've started this company 6-1 Live. I shouldn't say you just started it, because you've been doing this now essentially for a decade as well. Tell me a bit more about what you guys do when it comes to, like, if somebody's coming to Nashville to start that new festivals we talked about, they call you and they're like, Billy, yeah, heard a lot about you, man. Also saw some sweet modeling pics. Love the shell necklace. Awesome. But we're thinking about starting a festival there, man. Can 6-1 Live take care of everything soup to nuts after we get our permit? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Let's start having some conversations and collaborate and get to know each other. Start off on the right foot with just open communication and good vibes and good energy, and just kind of see what we can do together to make the experience right for the fans, right? Because me personally, I'm here to serve. Like it's not about me. It's about what can I do for you? How can I help you? And what does that look like? And how can we help you get to that point? So yeah, it's very personal and passionate. For me to be for us to be involved in that way of just spreading love the right way, the old school way. Mm-hmm. And to me, that makes sense.
But then from the business side of things, you've worked with so many huge brands, ESPN, Live Nation, E-Network, whatever. And then you've worked with some really awesome individual brand names, like we mentioned Snoop Dogg earlier, and you've worked with Dave Chappelle as well. Is it easier to deal with the corporate brand because everything is like cut and dry, this is the way we're doing it or we won't do it? Or is it more enjoyable to like just work with that manager, like the guy from California that that you can pick up the phone and say, hey man, you think maybe we could do something with the Foo Fighters down here in Nashville?
Mm-hmm. The corporate side of that is a little bit more structured, a little bit more manageable from just an operations, logistics, policies, and procedures side of things.
Yeah.
Key accountability is, very, very key, as you know, from someone with your experience as well. It's easy to follow, but it's also just learning how to read the room, like learning how to read artists as, again, like, just being respectful and mindful and open-minded and mindful of what they need and how they need it, and being able to tap into that without being weird, obviously, So it's a little bit more manageable, I think, with the other relationships that, and I wish I was cool enough to pick up the phone and be like, hey, we need Foo Fighters here. But I'm not that cool. But yeah, it's fun to, just collaborate with a lot of different people and being from Nashville and being a native, that's kind of what I learned. Like, you just got to be creative. You got to be mindful, caring, and passionate about, what you're doing, regardless, across the spectrum.
It seems like if the phone rings and it's ESPN, the mind starts saying, all right, well, here's a big budget event that they want to put on. And then I would think that if like a management firm calls and says, we've got this A-list act coming down, well, that sounds like more of, all right, we have to produce this thing and get it paid for. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah. Sometimes, they'll pick up the phone or, they'll call and say, hey, we, logistics are all together, operations together, money's there, budget's there. We just need kind of someone to run the day-to-day aspects of that. So then that's where I come in, into the point of running the day-to-day management, operational side of things, on the boots on the ground, type of thing. So there's a lot of different ways that it can kind of come about it, the phone calls, which are obviously good, the bidding, the aspect of that, the sales aspect of that. So there's a lot that goes into it that, gives you a lot of variety.
So you get that RFP in the inbox from ESPN and you're like, this is exciting, but there's probably 6 other firms that they're talking to for this same piece of business. Mm-hmm. So what's your edge? Like, what do you don't have to give away the secret sauce, but what is it that you and 6-1 Live can offer versus, maybe a larger firm?
Positive experience. What are ways that we can make your day and your life easy, and how can we do that? Putting a smile on your face like you're doing now. Like how can we put a smile on your face, and how can we make your experience better? My job is to, when you leave your space, whatever that is, that you're like on fire, man. You're like, yeah, I'm going to go home and crush a beer and not worry about anything falling apart. There's transparency, there's good business, there's honesty, there's all those things that, are important in business. Right. So that's my job. It's like, if you called me after, the gig or whatever, and you're like, man, that was a really great experience, thank you so much. Then in my head, I'm like, party, bonus, like done. I did my job. I made some people smile and gave them what they want and gave them a positive experience. And
friends, if you're thinking of having a festival or a live event in Nashville, Billy also knows the secret underground tunnels that nobody else knows because he grew up there. He can tell you how to get from the Ryman to the Grand Ole Opry without even going above ground. It's only he knows this. Yeah. So now that the live events are coming back, we're all super excited. We keep hearing pent up demand and all that. What's the thing that you're looking forward to? And also on that note, what's going to be different? We mentioned the vaccine stuff. So people are going to have that. In New York, we have, we call it the Empire Excelsior Pass, I should say. So like I went to Yankee Stadium for the first time the other day. It was insane. It was so much fun. But I was all excited to show my Excelsior pass, and they didn't even ask for it. So, I mean, is this something that people are going to be asking for?
I think so. I mean, with the liability and waivers and stuff these days with COVID, because obviously it still exists, and double vaccines, and, having everyone have their cards. I mean, it's still kind of up in the air. I mean, I think we're seeing it now slowly with the venues being opened, and once these policies and procedures are put into place, I think it makes it safe for everyone involved. I went to my first big event kind of out of the house. Went to Nashville SC game down the street with a few buddies of mine, and It was incredibly safe. Everything was buttoned up. They spaced everyone out, but you can still feel the energy in there. Unfortunately, I didn't go to the one last night when we won, but it was just, they did a very very good job doing that. So, in the festival side of things, and especially indoor venues, like what does that look like? And it's the unknown for all of us. Like you can't, back in the day, you and I could sit here and find a solution to A to B, but now it's like, then there's COVID. What does that look like?
I'm psyched that the soccer team has caught fire down there so quickly. It just shows the power of that sport and the energy of that city as well. And of course, you could have just jumped on the field if one of those soccer players goes down with one of those injuries where they're just writhing in pain on the ground. You're like, hey, UT club, I don't have a jersey, but I could jump in, man. I've had 3 beers, but I could jump in.
Oh my God, that would be the best. Yeah, before Nashville SC, there was the Metros.
Oh yeah,
and they played behind this a prison in a park, but it was awesome though, man. It was so much fun, and they were around for a while. And then, when we got word that Nashville SC was coming here, and what they're doing to the city and how they're doing it is absolutely spot on, fantastic. So I'm glad that it's, finally soccer is becoming quote unquote cool, in the South, especially in Tennessee, because growing up people were like, what? Like what? Yeah. Playing soccer? What is that?
There are 2 sports, football, and neither of those footballs were soccer.
Nope. Yeah, neither of them were. But I played football starting in like 5th grade, so I played both like year round. But the jocks and the football players were like, oh, I mean, I guess I get it. And I wasn't a kicker or a punter either, which is weird. But yeah, man, it was. I'm glad that it's coming back around, and they're doing such a good job at it.
Yeah, and a big part of why the MLS has become so successful from the early days of the MLS is that they've built these soccer-specific stadiums, 18,000, 20,000 seat stadiums, instead of having them play at like Nissan Field, right? It's like, you're not going to fill 80,000 seats every week for a game. It's just stupid. Yeah. And it's just that as the sport catches on, it's like, man, now this place is packed. And they can use that venue for so many other cool live events as well. So look, I know we're running out of time. So tell us how we can find out more about the festivals that you're working on, or more about 6-1 Live. And of course, about you. Is the modeling happening anymore? How do we find out more about you? Where can we find out more about your company too?
You can definitely find out more information at 61live.com, SIXONELIVE. And the updates, and I kind of keep a low profile, but it's you never know with a modeling game. I mean, now it's just I've got to work this COVID body off, so I might get some motivation to get back in the game a little bit.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Yes, Memorial Day is here, and I am not ready for it. The unofficial start of summer, friends, and thank you, and thank Billy. in advance because he's the reason that the biggest shows are coming back, and you can go be safe and enjoy the experience in writ large fashion. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the producer, the footballer, the punk rocker, the model, the dad, the new dad. Congratulations. He is Billy Gemmill, and we will see you next time on Festival Pass Stories. Billy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
This is Festival Pass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next.